فتزارفت عاشقا فأتيت إلى حبيبي فاحدى يا قلب ورفقا صلي على محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك حبيبي يا نبي الله
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum. On the trail of the earliest people, this is the topic we are going to discuss today. Since you all know that the primitive men were hunters and gatherers, they lived in the subcontinent as early as 2 million years ago. They were known as hunters and gatherers because they hunted wild animals, caught fish and birds. They collected and they first produced it as roots, nuts, fruits, stalks, and eggs. To hunt wild animals, one needs a lot of expertise. He must have a presence of mind and a great dexterity in nabbing the wild animal. Similarly, people who collect the forest produce must have the knowledge, must have an expertise in maintaining which parts of a plant are edible and which are poisons. Thus, both these tasks rely on one's expertise. There are many reasons why hunters and gatherers wandered from here and there. When people live at one place for a pretty long time, it means they exploit the natural resources of that area. Thus, it was expedient for them to wander here and there to exploit new lands and to exploit new areas and to accrue food and hunt wild animals, which were they in search of. The next reason is that since all the animals move from one place to another in search of grass and leaves, so the people who relied upon them for hunting had to trace their movements. The third point is that since the different plants bear fruits in different seasons, so accordingly the people had to move from season to season to exploit and to gather those fruits. Similarly, the fourth point is that the early people were in search of water. They used to live on the banks of the rivers. Some rivers were perennial and others were seasonal. Thus, they had to move from one place to another in search of water during dry seasons such as winter or summer. These were the reasons why the early people were wandering here and there. Since the period which we are discussing is a very lengthy period, as per the archaeologists have maintained that these hunters and gatherers lived from 2 million years up to 12,000 years ago. They have named it as Paleolithic Age. What is Paleolithic Age? Paleo means old and lithos meaning stone. It means old stone age. This old stone age is divided into three periods, that is lower Paleolithic age, middle Paleolithic and Middle Paleolithic Age and the Upper Paleolithic Age. There is also next era that is known as Mesolithic, which we will discuss. It covers the 99% of human history. Archaeologists and historians maintain that the primitive men usually used stone tools, and those stone tools have been excavated in different sites in India. For instance, here is a map. You see, here are Kurnool caves in Andhra Pradesh, Hansj, Karnataka, Bhimbetka, Madhya Pradesh. These three sites, there are other sites also where the hunters and gatherers lived. You see, here is a Narmada River in the periphery of Narmada River, and in the Deccan Plateau, the hunters and gatherers predominantly lived. So, we are discussing about the tools of the hunters and gatherers. The archaeologists have found various tools from these sites, especially from Bhimbetka and Hansj. These two sites, which are located in India, we have got a host of tools, stone tools, scrapers, borers, burins, and a host of other stone tools. Similarly, you see here is Hansj. Hansj, the archaeologists have found here the habitation compacted site. That means here the stone tools were made, and the evidences of those tools are available with the historians. So these this is the history of Indian perspective. But as far as the stone tools are concerned, the primordial and the earliest stone tools were Oldowan and Acheulean tools. Oldowan tools were found in Melke Kanchur, Ethiopia, some 1.8 million to 1.6 million years ago. And Homo habilis is known as the first stone tool maker. And these tools were made, the Oldowan tools were made by the Homo habilis. Similarly, there are other tools that are known as Acheulean tools. Acheulean tools have been found in Saint-Achille, in a cave, Saint-Achille in North France, which is a European country. And those tools were made by Homo erectus. The Acheulean tools were found from 1.4 million years to up to 1 lakh years ago. And those tools were used for chopping, cutting, piercing, and pounding. The next set of tools is known as Mostrian tools, which were predominantly found in Asia and Europe. Those tools were made by Neanderthal. And those tools included borers, knives, scrapers, and burins. You see, there is another set of stone tools which are known as Upper Paleolithic tools. The stone tool making got mastery in Upper Paleolithic period. We see every type of material was used. For instance, the tusks, teeth, horns of the animals, and stone, as well as the stone tools were used in this period. And the more vibrant tool which was used in this period was known as atlatl, that is known as super thrower, which had a range of 150 meters. The last stage of stone tool making lasted up to Mesolithic period. that is from 12,000 years to 10,000 years, a Mesolithic era is known. In the Mesolithic period, microliths were made. Those were small, tiny tools which were more sharp than the earlier tools. And the most predominant tools which were found in this era were sickles and saws. In this way, this Stone Age came to an end. We found the evidence about the primitive men by finding their stone tools. Similarly, you see in this map, here are Kurnool caves where the primitive men lived. Since the primitive men lived in caves to protect themselves from heat, scorching heat, rain or wind, or wild animals. So you see here are Kurnool caves where the ashes have been found inside the caves, which indicates that the early men, the hunters and gatherers, used to burn fire. However, it must be borne in mind that the fire was first discovered in China, in Zhoukhoudin cave in China, some 5 lakh years ago. Many of the caves in India, such as Madhya Pradesh and southern Uttar Pradesh, many rock paintings were found on the walls of the caves where the early men lived. For instance, wild animals, scenes of wild animals have been found in different caves in India. Sometimes hunting scenes have been found. The people hunting wild animals, which indicate that those people were hunting the wild animals. Similarly, in the Altamira caves in France, we found a hunting scene, which gives a clue that these hunters and gatherers were people were predominantly relied on the wild animals for their survival and food. You see, there was a change in the environment from 12,000 years ago. There was a shift in climate. The climate became warmer than before, and this in turn made room for grasslands to grow. Similarly, when the grasslands spread across the world, wild animals such as deer, antelope, cattle, sheep, goat, etc., their population grew simultaneously. And the people who hunted those wild animals came to know about their breeding patterns. They began to understand different animals, their food habits, their grazing patterns, and their breeding patterns. Thus, they started herding and domesticating wild animals. Thus, the domestication of wild animals began in this era. This was also a time when different grain-bearing grasses such as barley, wheat, and rice grew naturally. The people came to know about these crops, and they began to understand how and when these crops, seeds grew and ripened. In this way, the domestication of crops and the domestication of crops, or the cultivation of crops, began in this era. So, hence we come to the conclusion that from Paleolithic era to Neolithic era, different changes occurred, Thus, we come to the conclusion how the hunter-gatherer culture developed and prospered through the ages. Now we come to the conclusion, and after the conclusion, here are some question answers, textual question answers. We will see. Complete the sentences. A part. Hunter-gatherers choose to live in caves and rock shelters to save themselves from heat, rain, and wind. B part. Grasslands developed around 12,000 years ago. C part. Early people painted on the walls of caves. Number D. In Hansje, tools were made of stone. Question number 2. Name the states where Bhimbetka, Hansje, and Kurnool are located. Bhimbetka is located in Madhya Pradesh, Hansje in Karnataka, and Kurnool in Andhra Pradesh. Question number 3. Why did hunter-gatherers travel from place to place? The hunter-gatherers used to wander here and there in search of food and shelter. Question number 4. List 3 ways in which hunter-gatherers used fire. The hunter-gatherers used fire as a source of light to cook meat and to scare away animals. Question number 5. Which types of tools were used by the hunter-gatherers? The hunter-gatherers used tools made of stone, wood, and bone. Write down all the question answers and memorize. Thanks for watching. Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.